I have seen lots of children with my own lying eyes being pulled from the rubble.
Because they're the pictures Hamas wants you to see. Exactly my point.
They're dead,
they're the pictures Hamas wants.
But they're also people that your government has killed. You accept that, right? You've killed children, or do you deny that?
No, I do not.
Last night, Mehdi Hassan spoke to Netanyahu advisor Mark Regev, who refused to accept that the IDF had killed any children in Gaza during their month-and-a-half-long assault on Gaza. Now, here's more of Regev questioning the validity of reports coming out of Gaza and flat out denying the reality of what the IDF is doing.
Hamas, until now, we're destroying their military machine, and with that, we're eroding their control. But up until now, they've been in control of the Gaza Strip. And as a result, they control all the images coming out of Gaza. Have you seen one picture of a single dead Hamas terrorist in the fighting in Gaza? Not one. Is that by accident, or is that because Hamas can control the information?
You asked me a question and you said you would be brief. I haven't, you're right, but I have seen lots of children with my own lying eyes being pulled from the rubble.
Because they're the pictures Hamas wants you to see. Exactly my point.
They're dead,
they're the pictures Hamas wants.
They're also people that your government has killed. You accept that, right? You've killed children, or do you deny that?
No, I do not. I do not. I do not. First of all, you don't know how those people died, those children.
Oh, wow.
First of all, we don't want to see a single child killed.
You don't know how those children died, as if the buildings are just crumbling around them randomly. Just absolutely despicable. Now, I said that he is denying the reality of what's happening. So let's take a minute to talk about what that reality is. Now, Reuters reported that Israel has pounded Gaza with airstrikes and cut off food and fuel. Gaza health authorities, deemed reliable by the United Nations, say more than 11,000 people have been confirmed killed, more than 40% of them children, with many more feared trapped under rubble of bombed out homes. Although, according to Regev, we don't know how they died. Absurd. Now, that's over 4,600 children, which surpasses the number of children killed in conflict zones around the world each year since 2019. From Washington Post, the United Nations, which has lost more than 100 of its employees, has called the conditions horrific, describing Gaza as a living nightmare and a graveyard for children. I've been reading firsthand accounts of people in Gaza who describe the smell of blood filling the air, that they can't walk through their neighborhoods without seeing body parts strewn in the streets, and that their neighborhoods themselves are entirely unrecognizable because of the relentless bombing campaign of Israel. But let's talk about these children who Regev refuses to admit the IDF has killed. Let's give you some of the statistics and compare it to other conflicts, of various durations. Here's a graph that shows that more than 4,000 children have been killed in 1 month in Gaza. In Yemen, slightly fewer children have been killed in a 7+ year conflict, and fewer children were killed in Iraq over 15 years. And Cenk, I know that this man's job is to do propaganda on behalf of the state of Israel, but to sit there with a straight face and to not admit that even one child, that Israel has killed even one child, is so beyond the pale. And we've covered a lot of the propaganda that the IDF has been pushing, particularly towards, a Western audience, that is just absurd. But for me, this just takes the cake. That anyone could watch that and believe it. It's sickening to see.
Yeah. So let's talk about propaganda. So his job, Regev's job, is to do Israeli propaganda. That's why he goes on television. And and I don't begrudge it, I get it. He's arguing for his side. He's not very good at it because he said things that are so absurd that it makes his side look laughable and ridiculous and disgusting. So he says the pictures are the ones that Hamas wants you to see. Well, then why did you help Hamas? If you hadn't killed the kids, then Hamas wouldn't have any dead kids to show. And then you would have vanquished their propaganda brilliantly. In fact, you would have had the moral high ground. You did have the moral high ground when Hamas attacked you. It's the first time Israel's had the moral high ground in a long time, because of course they've kept 5 million Palestinians as hostages for over 56 years, saying we're not going to let them go. They're in open air prisons, and there are prisoners, and they will be for apparently forever. because Palestinians cannot govern themselves because they're too violent. Well, that's just racist ideology, unabashed racism to say that the Palestinians are the only people on earth who cannot govern themselves. Because they're too violent. But we just saw you kill 10 times as many civilians as Hamas did. So who's too violent? Now, any discussion of race or religion is absurd. These are just ridiculous labels that people put on each other. Israelis and Palestinians are identical. They are human beings. So, but don't come here telling us about propaganda when you're doing wall-to-wall propaganda. And the reason Israel's like livid right now is because they're like, we used to control all of the media, and I don't mean in terms of Jews. Don't put that crazy stuff out of your head. There's tons of Irish people, Christians, Muslims that run all sorts of different media. I don't mean it that way. I mean that when Israel asked the US government for help, and you would have wall-to-wall, Israel is always right, the Palestinians don't matter, they don't count as human beings, we're not even gonna cover their side. But that has broken. By the way, for all the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, then why has US media, in this case, been fair? The blockade is over. The US media is showing the dead kids, showing dead Palestinians, aggressively questioning the Israeli government. You see, they don't control all the media. But when you're an ally of the United States, you get a massive advantage. Same is true of Saudi Arabia in Yemen. We didn't show any of the dead kids in Yemen, even though there were tons and tons of dead kids in Yemen, because Saudi Arabia is an ally, Israel is an ally. That's how propaganda works. So that's what they did there. And what difference does it make, guys? This is the talking point that they're using all over media. Well, those are Hamas numbers. Now, first of all, it's Palestinian Health Ministry. That the doctors that run the health ministry are not Hamas terrorists, okay? Number two, but much more importantly, the United Nations has verified those numbers. But even if that weren't true, let's say it's not 11,400. What do you want the number to be? 10,800, because some of them are Hamas fighters. What difference does it make? If it's not 4,600 kids, only 4,400 kids. What difference does it make? So this is the most egregious, ridiculous, and honestly buffoonish propaganda I've ever seen, where they say, don't believe your lying eyes, we haven't killed any kids, and everything is Hamas's fault. No one believes you anymore. The media, the minute that the media blockade was over, which has happened in this conflict, instantly 68% of Americans say ceasefire, 80% of Democratic voters say ceasefire. This is ridiculous. You've got to stop killing those kids. And they seem totally unrepentant at this point.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of this is the rhetorical and political strategy that Israel has been taking, which I don't think is any longer working, at least in terms of the broader public, in terms of the broader ways people around the planet actually feel about what's going on, to basically use dehumanizing, subhuman discourse to make all of this about Hamas. Hamas is sort of the boogeyman. You can't talk about the conflict. You can't talk about the history of this conflict. You can't talk about Gaza. You can't even talk about the West Bank and all the things that are going on. Everything has to be about Hamas, and Hamas as a subhuman, a sort of not even worth reckoning with, and whose lives should be taken out no matter what the collateral damage is. But I think the cracks are really starting to form, and I think that people, I mean, look at the Bay Bridge being flooded by protesters yesterday, protests all around the planet. I was telling you earlier, Cenk, like I've been, on a kind of crazy travels over the last week. I've been in India, I've been in Dubai, I've been in Portugal, and there are people enraged about what's going on right now there. And that's because, honestly, the Israeli propaganda machine, which has nothing to do with Judaism whatsoever, Zionism and Judaism are totally different from one another on every level at all, is now coming unglued in many different ways. But there is no end game, and that's part of why it's coming unglued. It's not clear to any of us what the end game is. First it was, let's do airstrikes, that's the best thing to do. Now the Israeli state is saying, well, our ground operations are actually much more effective than airstrikes. Then why did you do all these airstrikes? Then we're hearing about, well, we're not seeing any dead Hamas, yet at the same time, then why would you go to the Al-Shifa hospital and claim that that was a Hamas operating center if Hamas is not dead? So, and I think the major point of all is that for every so-called Hamas person being targeted by the IDF, around 100 or so civilians are getting killed. We don't really know what's going on still. I'm so glad that images and stories and accounts are coming out. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest question is, what is the end game? I know we've talked about this before. Like, what does the Israeli government want out of all of this? And to say Hamas controls Gaza and we don't is just the most absurd position when you've erected an open air prison over Hamas. And keep in mind, what we aren't talking about through all of this is the overall Palestinian situation, including in the West Bank, where somebody like me can wander around far more freely than an actual Palestinian who comes from that land. Somebody like me has way more political rights, rights of mobility, rights of speech than a Palestinian person themselves. And we're knowing that settlers are brutalizing children there as well. And then last major point is, we talked about this before, Ray and Cenk. Most of these poor people, it's really heartbreaking, in Gaza are, average age 18 years old. Many of them have never seen a world where they didn't live in an open air prison. And to think that those people can be argued as collateral damage, and you can decontextualize all of history by making this all about Hamas and just the events of October. I think all of it is falling apart. But at the same time, those who do have power, both in our nation and in the Israeli state, seem to be doubling down in a way that's really at odds with how most of the rest of us feel about this at this point.
So look, I'll say last couple of things here. Half the homes in Gaza have been destroyed. So is Israeli propagandists like Regev pretending that Hamas did that? Are they pretending that they didn't drop 7,000 bombs? Are they pretending that Hamas was in all those homes? No, so the last piece of the propaganda that has fallen, which is, oh no, we had all the best intent in the world. And we were, unlike those brutal Hamas guys, and they are brutal, we intended amazing things, and golly gee, we just missed all the time. And we happened to accidentally hit half the houses in Gaza. And now we happen to have 4,600 dead children. Oops, I mean, golly gee, I was trying to hit 1 or 2 Hamas guys. I didn't intend for any civilian deaths, they just happened to be collateral damage. Well, that's an obvious lie now. Obvious.
Yeah.
Indiscriminate killing of civilians. Totally, utterly indiscriminate. And so don't kid yourself about any illusions that they were actually targeting Hamas when they wiped out northern Gaza completely. And look at the outrageous lies of the IDF. Al-Shifa Hospital, after devastating it. Oh, there's this incredible Hamas headquarters underneath it. They got in the building 48 hours ago. Where is it? There's no headquarters at all. It was always a lie, and they showed a couple of flak jackets and a pair of boots. In other words, there was nothing there. Nothing. It was a lie all along.
Yeah, and Regev, what his comments are actually at odds with what even Netanyahu is saying. Netanyahu is now saying, oh, we actually have killed some kids by mistake. Regev's like saying something completely different. But then I think the bigger question is, what creates movements like Hamas? And don't you think that this brutal assault on these people is going to create more and more Hamases? So existential angst and fear of collective annihilation can create more collective annihilation, right? That's what happened to our Jewish brothers and sisters. And I'm really concerned that the same thing is happening to the Palestinian peoples now.
And I'll double down on one last thing that Ramesh said, which is, what's the end game here? You say, oh, why doesn't Hamas give up? Then we'll stop killing the civilians. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's like saying, oh, it's all Saddam Hussein's fault for not giving up. That's why we had to kill hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians. No, we invaded that country in that particular case for absolutely no reason. And whether some dictator or some terrorist gives up or not has nothing to do with why you're killing civilians. And so the idea that Hamas is going to surrender, or that there's going to be a clear point where Hamas has lost, and hence now Israel can say, oh, now we're going to leave Gaza. No, there is no such thing. It's purposely an impossible standard that will never be met. And right now, Israeli cabinet officials have talked about basically taking Gaza. And saying, you know what? So since Hamas has not been eradicated, a standard that is literally impossible, we will just now keep a lot of this land. It was ours anyway. And if they do that, they have no idea the dangers they will have unleashed, not just for themselves, not just for the Palestinians, but for the whole world. Because there's no way in the world that the Muslim world is going to stand by and let Israel take Gaza.
You can't walk back from all of this. And at the end of the day, I just want to invite every single person who sees this to just think about the moral calculus around the sacredness of all life, right? Like any life, innocent life that's being murdered, we should always stand up against. Jewish life, Muslim life, Hamas life, kids' life, everyone's lives, right? Settler lives, everyone's lives, whether we like them or not. And so I just ask all of us who are watching this and are part of our progressive movement, but just everybody anywhere, to just deplore, decry, and stand up against any murder of innocent life.
Super last thing, to back up what Ramesh is saying, the Israeli Defense Forces, a lot of them are kids too. Absolutely. I don't want to see them die. Yeah. So the issue isn't with those particular people, the issue is with the leaders. We have to find leaders that have something called empathy. And stop electing warmongers who profit from war personally from their career and in some cases financially. So we've got to do better, all of us, Americans, Israelis, Palestinians. Let's please elect leaders that are for peace and that understand that we're all human beings, and stop electing warmongers who only want to commit more and more war crimes and atrocities like Benjamin Netanyahu.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below, because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.